Bonjour. Merci Monsieur Tahar Achor pour l'excellente présentation. En fait, pour des raisons de clarté et de simplicité, ma présentation en fait sera en anglais. Donc, mais vous êtes bien sûr les bienvenus de poser vos questions soit en arabe, en français ou en anglais. Good morning. Just as I said, actually, I'm happy to be here with you today within this framework of renewable energy conference organized within the framework of the Moroccan Solaire Expo here in Casablanca. I'm Abdelghani Gharias. I work as a senior energy analyst at l'Observatoire Méditerranéen de l'énergie in Paris, France. And actually, as you might have seen during the last kind of day and a half, it has been mostly focusing on renewable energy efficiency and to some extent on renewable energy, especially in Morocco. My presentation today, it will give a regional perspective where we are. It's like a benchmark basically compared to global level within the framework of the policy framework in terms of installed capacity, so on and so forth. So without further ado, I'll just give kind of some background within the framework of this presentation. Basically, this presentation is within the framework of a research project by the European Commission. It's called the Middle East and North Africa Regional Architecture, Mapping Geopolitical Shifts, Regional Order and Domestic Transformation. It's a 3-year project that involves several partners, especially from Europe and also from Morocco, including Al Akhawain University. OME's role in this project has been mainly energy issues, actually. So just some words also on OME for those who don't know it. OME is an industry association gathering the major energy companies operating in the Mediterranean, basically North Mediterranean and South and Southeast. We are a think tank on energy issues. We provide services, statistics, so on and so forth. So you have the slide. Sometimes I might not go over all the details, but you have the slide as a background for you to have more information. Just to set the scene, basically, this is as you see in the map. This is our kind of geographical coverage in terms of our studies and publications. We cover the whole Mediterranean countries, which is about 24 countries. Within the framework of the project I was referring to, the Menara project, we cover the whole Middle East and North Africa. But today, in order not to be that much broad, we limited the presentation just to the South and East Mediterranean, include from Morocco up to kind of Turkey. So to give you where we are in terms of how the region vis-a-vis en fait the global kind of figures, we have 11 countries that represents 11% of the world population. We have around now 307, 310 million people in the region. We have 4% of GDP, gross domestic product, 3% of total private energy demand, and 3% of global CO2 emission. So as you can see, relatively speaking, we almost kind of the region within the framework of 3 to 4%. So proportionally speaking, it's responsible for CO2 for 3% of TPS and so on and so forth. So we're not kind of an outlier in that perspective. Here, because I'm referring actually to give you why I'm talking today and why we need renewables within the framework of our work at l'Observatoire Méditerranéen de l'énergie. We have developed an OME energy model, which is basically that kind of studies or models forecast supply and demand 2030 and 2040. So still, these scenarios, just a word of caution, they should be still kind of taken as cautiously, because it's a social science. It's not an exact science that you can say for sure that the demand will be like that, but it gives us a clear idea where we're going if we do if and if not analysis. I will just give maybe one or two presentations about the outlook 2030 and 2040. We have developed two scenarios the first scenario, what we call the reference scenario, which is basically business as usual scenario. And the proactive scenario is what we call a proactive scenario, which is an alternative. So the baseline scenario kind of takes into account trends, current policies, and ongoing projects. And it is based on the UN climate kind of issues, especially the countries usually within the framework of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. They have submitted what we call the nationally distributed contributions. So it's like each country submits its contribution to combating climate change in terms of energy efficiency, renewable energy, reducing CO2, reducing demand, so on and so forth. But under the reference, we say that international financing will not become available because under these two scenarios, under the NDCs, countries say what is conditional and unconditional. So only unconditional NDC targets will be met, which is basically kind of reference as usual. And for the countries in the south, we say that the electricity demand, for example, under this scenario will be covered using fossil fuels, basically oil and gas and coal to some extent, especially in Morocco and Israel, that are using coal in the energy kind of electricity mix. For the proactive scenario, however, we say it's based on the implementation of strong energy efficiency programs, renewable energy, and this NDCs submitted by country. And we say that all the targets that have been submitted by the individual countries will be met fully. And we assume that international financing will become available, investors will be there, so all the targets will be met. Here I would talk a bit kind of about the energy demand based on these two scenarios, under the reference scenario and under the proactive scenario. As you can see, from 1990 up to 2015, actually the energy demand has increased by 123%. So that's a really big jump, basically. And just a word of caution, when we talk usually about the South and East Mediterranean countries, sometimes it's a bit kind of biased because there are few countries that are the big ones, like Egypt and Turkey, namely Turkey and Egypt, because they account for 60% of total private energy demand, and the rest is split by the other countries. Under the reference scenario, by 2040, if we don't do anything, if we just follow the current trend, the energy demand will increase by 126%. However, under the PS, it will increase by only 75%. Under the CS, what we call the reference scenario, the MTOE, it will be around 800 MTOE compared to 2016 level. And by 2040, under the proactive scenario, we will have around 630, which is 21% lower actually. If we compare the two trajectories, we will have a difference of 21% lower. In terms of the energy mix, as you can see from the graph, here maybe I took out kind of the percentages in 1990 and 2015, but generally speaking, it is still heavily dependent on fossil fuels. It's mainly oil and gas. In the outlook, relatively speaking, under the reference scenario, it will not change the percentage actually of the percentage basically would not change. It would stay around 7%. But under the proactive scenario, we would see a really an important increase actually of renewable energy. I have some figures here because sometimes it's hard to remember all the figures. I think it's around 12% under the outlook. So this is basically the energy demand. I move to power generation. The power generation basically it's a bit, I would say, improved, because when we talk about energy demand, is the total energy demand that the economy consumes in the industry, in the service, in the agricultural sector. But we will see that the picture is a bit kind of different in the power generation sector, because most of the policies at the regional and national or even the global level have been focusing on the electricity sector, but really, relatively speaking, neglecting other sectors. So in terms of the electricity generation, we have kind of an annual growth rate between 6% between 1990 and 2015, reaching 774 terawatt hour in 2017. The reason why I'm showing actually 2015, because in our scenarios it was the base year, but we have for sure updated data of 2016 or 2017. So that's why I prefer to keep our base year, why we kind of through which we develop the scenarios. So for the renewable energy, it would be accounting for 17% in 2017. In the outlook, there will be a very important penetration of renewables, especially under the proactive scenario. We can see that renewables, hydro and non-hydro, actually would account for 3%. The reason as well why we include hydro and non-hydro, because hydro, it's a rather mature technology. So that has been already very costly competitive since a while ago. So that's why we made the kind of the split between the two technologies, even though other renewables have catch up in terms of cost competitiveness. So the key message basically here is that the important penetration of renewables under the PS. In terms of installed capacity, we would have even more important penetration, which would reach like around even 47% by 2040 under the proactive scenario. So 47% of renewables in total electric installed capacity by 2040 under the proactive scenario. That's very important penetration in the outlook. So this is basically what I have to say in terms of the outlook, and just in terms to give you where we are and where we would be under the two different scenarios, the business as usual if we don't do anything, so we'll follow just the current trend, and the proactive scenario if we take aggressive measures like achieving our renewable energy targets, energy efficiency targets, and basically limiting demand and combating reducing CO2 emissions. Here, just to give you a general overview basically on word installed capacity and capacity installed in the South and East Mediterranean countries. SEMSC, just to know what it is the South and East Mediterranean countries when I refer to SEMCEs. So we could see a very important increase in renewable energy installed capacity since 2010-2017. We have seen it's like starting from 1,250 gigawatt in 2010 up to 2,000, almost 2,200 gigawatt in 2017. That's really a big jump, which is almost double actually of the installed capacity at the global level. We would see actually that there is not, in terms, because the graph on the left you see the installed capacity at the global level, and on the right you would see the installed capacity in the South and East Mediterranean countries, which has reached around 50 something in 2017. Here, just by technology, to give you an overview about World versus South and East Mediterranean technologies and how the different technologies have evolved. It's basically just more details compared to the previous slide. So we can see that up to now, by far, hydro is still the highest installed capacity at the global level and even in the South and East Mediterranean region. However, we would see that very different growth rates at the South and East Mediterranean region, especially solar PV in particular has increased from 115 megawatt in 2010 to around 5.5 gigawatt in 2017. That was even up to 2010, it has moved from a really low base. So that's a very important increase. However, I would say that still it's too far from fully exploiting the potential the region has, because the region as a whole is one of the most endowed regions in terms of solar energy and to some extent wind as well. But we would say that over the last 5 years, we would see that kind of electricity from renewable energy most likely would dominate the installed capacity and even would surpass natural gas and other kind of technologies. Here I would go into more details. I bit kind of moved now from the global to versus South and East Mediterranean countries. Most of my presentation will be on the South and East Mediterranean. So here the graph gives you a clear picture of the electricity capacity by type at the regional level. As you can see, coal, for example, has not increased that much, even though we hope that it would not. Oil stayed, relatively speaking, I would say stagnant, or the most important kind of increase has been gas. Gas, relatively speaking, is the cleaner technology and sometimes used as a backup. But another issue we see here is that there is a doubling actually of renewable energy capacity, start from 25 to 50 gigawatt, and the share or the split by technology, you would see that still hydropower is by far the biggest share, which 34 gigawatt, and 60 is basically other renewables. We have around 5.5 PV and 9.5 or even around 10 gigawatt of wind. So as I was saying, natural gas is still dominating the electricity mix, but in the current trends, renewables will basically dominate the market in the previous or in the years to come. Here I would just show kind of the installed capacity by country. The figures are for 2017. We have actually the figures of 2018, but they were preliminary, so we didn't want to show any 2018 figures, especially because there have been several installations, especially in Morocco, in Egypt, Israel, Jordan, and I would say and Turkey. These are kind of that have witnessed the most kind of installations in 2018. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Ashur, you can correct me, I'm not sure that Tunisia actually has installed any capacity in 2018, I mean utility scale. So that's why I was referring saying that actually there are some countries that have witnessed some installed capacity during 2018 and others not. So as you can see, by far actually Turkey, I put it in the graph because on the left we have all the countries up to Libya, and on the right we have Turkey, because if we graph Turkey with the same scale and level with all the countries, it would really kind of misrepresent, I would say, a bit the graph. That's why I put it on the right, so it has even around 40 gigawatt in terms of installed capacity. So by far it's 77% of the region's total installed capacity is in Turkey. But we have also important penetration share in almost all the other countries. By technology, as I was saying, you see that we have hydro in Egypt, Morocco, Syria, and Turkey. Wind, we have just a few. We have Egypt, Morocco, Jordan, Tunisia. In terms of penetration, because it's always good to show in absolute terms how many we have in terms of the installed capacity, but it's very important to show the percentage in terms of the electric system, or in terms of the installed capacity of the total installed capacity. So the figures at the top of each country represent the share of renewable energy installed capacity in total electric installed capacity. By far you would see that Turkey has actually renewables account for 46%. We have followed by Morocco 34%. Just I must say a warning about Syria, given that actually that of the socio-political situation ongoing. So the figures in Syria are old. So I'm not sure that all the installed capacity is already still functioning in place, especially maybe hydro. They might have already been exposed to damage or something like that. But I'm using an old figure just kind of a warning, not to compare what's comparable and to put things into perspectives. I have here a slide. Actually, I was expecting to have more on investments, but just have this slide. The region as a whole is getting very attractive in terms of attracting finance, especially at the global level. We see that the region accounts for 2% of the total investments. Again, we see that Egypt, Turkey attracted the largest flows. I'm talking here on 2017. Maybe other countries have attracted more in 2016, but I'm referring here just 2017. But also other countries like Lebanon, Morocco, Israel, Jordan, they have really moving ahead with their renewable energy projects, and they have also attracted important investments. To move on, this is a very important slide, I would say, because it talks about from economics, from the competitiveness of renewables. Because I don't think that now we can also say that renewables are not competitive compared to conventional fossil fuels. As you can see, actually this slide, to give credit, it was taken from the IEA, but we did some updates on it. And as you can see, actually, the region has attracted one of the most competitive auction electricity prices in the region. If we take the example of Morocco, the wind integrated program of 800 megawatt, it was around 32 kind of US dollars per megawatt hour. We have also Jordan, which has attracted a 25 US dollars per megawatt hour, Egypt 30. So these are the most attractive, I would say, kind of the region has the most attractive awarded prices. And actually, in terms of the reduction of cost, we have seen that the most noticeable kind of cost reductions has been witnessed or observed at especially solar PV technology, with around 73% according to IRENA. From 2010 to 2017, the global weighted average LCOE, the local levelized cost of electricity, has decreased by 73%. We have other technologies for sure, like wind, CSP also, but I would say with the exception of CSP, it's one of a few exceptions that is not still costly competitive, but still we have to look at CSP from different angles in terms of the value that it gives, in terms of dispatchability, in terms of storage, and so on and so forth. Just a word of warning, actually, because when we see these prices, the first thing that comes into mind, we say, oh, well, 25, we can have 25 everywhere in the world, maybe in Germany, maybe in the US, in the north. No, I'm sorry, because still these are country-specific, sites and site-specific, and there are several kind of factors that explain why we have these record low prices at the global level.
In a risky environment, usually lenders ask for a higher premiums. Higher premiums would mean a higher weighted average cost of capital, which means a higher electricity produced. So we have to keep in mind, especially this is a warning, especially for developers and policymakers to take into account, because we cannot expect to have 25, I think, even at the global level. And another thing that has to do with the announced prices is what we call the lead time. Because I hope that most of these developers that gave kind of record low prices, or at least would fulfill their commitments, because the issue, the announced, sometimes if we take examples, the time between the bid, the evaluation, and the announcing of the bid, and the construction of a plant, it could be even 4 years. So some developers usually kind of relax their assumptions and assume maybe that the cost reduction would decrease. Because if we take several examples, between the time of the announcing of the bid and the construction, it's 4 years or even more. So, and another element, last but not least, is the auctioning design, because several countries have different auction design elements in terms of the requirements, in terms of the PPA and how it is determined. Some countries provide some sovereign guarantees, others don't. Some, for example, say that they index, for example, the PPA on foreign kind of international currencies like the US dollar or the euro. So this is what I basically had to say about the prices and at the global and the regional level. Here I just compiled this slide about electricity tariffs in the electricity in some selected countries, actually, because my first idea was to convert the exchange rate to US dollars, to a unified currency, and to show all these selected countries in one graph. But unfortunately, when I was trying to convert the exchange rate from a nominal perspective, I showed, especially for some countries, that the electricity tariffs actually went down, which is not true. Because if we take the situation of Turkey, Turkey's currency has really lost a lot of its value, and when I showed it in US dollar, it showed actually it went down. That's why I kept actually for each country basically the local currency. But this is basically just to give you a general point of view that electricity generation costs are basically gradually kind of reflected in the electricity tariffs. If you see at the top by green, those are the absolute technology kind of targets. And just a word of warning, this graph does not include hydro. It's non-hydro. It's basically wind, solar PV, solar CSP, geothermal, and so on. And as you can see, actually, most of the countries have established renewable energy targets up to 2030 or 2030, 25. What can be seen actually from the experience that a lot of countries have initiated their targets around 2010, 2009, 2010, 2011. And they have revised their renewable energy targets because the context changed, the regulatory framework has not been that consolidated. There have been several issues at the developing renewables at the global level. But as you can see from the picture, it shows by far that we have Turkey, Morocco, I would say, Jordan, Tunisia, some of the countries that are doing well in terms of moving or achieving their renewable energy projects. Others, they are kind of coming slowly, but eventually they would. If we take the example of Algeria, by the way, is there anybody from non-Moroccans here, if I can ask? Okay, still, I would say it's still a Moroccan conference because most of the people are Moroccan, because I was hoping maybe to have more people from the region, but this is very important to have things from a different perspective. So if we take what we have and the comparison between the targets, we have around 120 gigawatt to be installed by the different time horizons for all these countries. For the hydro, we have around 8.3 gigawatt of hydro to be installed, mainly in Turkey and Morocco, because as I was always saying, hydro is a mature technology. It was already fully exploited. So we have just few exceptions that still have some potential, especially Turkey and Morocco, and that they are kind of already allocated some kind of targets. I would here go by technology. So as you can see, in terms of the technology, we have solar PV and wind. that are basically account for the largest renewable energy targets. We have around 58 for solar PV and 56 for wind. I'm just giving these figures I gave are basically the total, not the difference to be installed, because the difference it would be 52 and 47. Solar CSP, I want to say a few words maybe or a word about solar CSP because in 2010 several countries actually have devoted a larger portion for concentrated solar power in their national renewable energy projects. But they have revised actually their program, especially Algeria, Tunisia, well, even Morocco revised, but never actually reduced down the size of CSP. Because in Morocco, it was like technology neutral. They say solar, they don't say whether CSP or PV. But for those countries that have been specific about technology, they kind of have this attitude, what we call wait and see, because especially from the Noor complex in Ouarzazate, they were expecting to say, okay, let's wait and see how Morocco is doing in advancing on its CSP projects, and maybe we can kind of see whether we would develop or not. So that's why most of the countries in the region actually have their own CSP projects after 2020. For sure, they already have some pilot projects. We have the Ain Benimtar, which is 20 megawatt combined with the gas. We have the one in Hassi Mali in Algeria. We have the other one in Kuraymat in Egypt. But these are small-scale hybrid kind of power plants. But I'm talking about large scale projects. I see here, okay, geothermal actually it's already fulfilled because the only country, if I'm not mistaken, is Turkey, which has more than 1,000 gigawatts of geothermal, but I would say that it has already fulfilled its targets, and I think it would go even beyond its target. Am I doing well on time? C'est bon, il me reste quelque chose, non? Il me reste combien de temps? Ok, je peux... Just to give you an important kind of slide, because renewables per se, as I was always saying, the policy framework is one of the most important kind of drivers for renewable energy deployment. Without a policy framework, we would not have these projects at the global level. We say that the countries have adopted several policy mechanisms. Almost countries provide either fiscal or public financing incentives. And this slide actually, because when I was developing this, the picture in 2010 and 2017 has changed dramatically. And even actually Algeria, it should not be green, because just last December, because under the framework of their first national program, or even the second, they have what we call feed-in tariff. And feed-in tariff, it was allocated by a fund basically by 1% of oil and gas royalties in Algeria, but they have cancelled actually the feed-in tariff system, so it does not exist anymore, and they have substituted by auctioning, like other countries basically, like Morocco or Turkey. Actually, Turkey also is one of the countries that has been doing feed-in tariffs. But given that under the framework of what we call big project zones or something like that, they have moved actually to auctionings, because Turkey, they do what we call selling price, even though they announce an auction, but they say this is the maximum developers have to submit. If you submit beyond the selling price, you would disqualify. So they have also moved to auctioning. So almost all countries actually have moved to auctioning, especially because auctioning has been used as kind of a price discovery mechanism, and through which a lot of countries have achieved the really very competitive electricity prices. So that's why we see this shift towards auctioning. A few words actually about, because I put net metering as well and auctioning for Morocco. Well, for Morocco, it's not really net metering from the classical sense, where we have like the residential consumers or prosumers, if we can adopt this term, producers, consumers. which are basically connected to low voltage. I'm using net metering here in the sense that this is basically allows big industrial projects to what we call dans le cadre du projet énergie pro autoproduction, donc to produce and for their own consumption and to sell the excess electricity for sure if it is still available. So the word basically is just the shift towards auctioning. That's the key message I would like to get from this kind of slide. Here I would not go actually into this slide that much because it just says the sustainable energy and climate measures, especially submitted by the South and East Mediterranean countries within the framework of the UNFCCC in terms of renewable energy, energy efficiency, and CO2 emissions. But these are based, as I was saying actually in the beginning, they were taken into account in our scenarios, the reference scenario and the proactive scenario. So under the proactive scenario, all these kind of objectives, we assume that they are fulfilled and their countries reach their targets in terms of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and CO2 mitigation. Here, because it's sometimes, I would not say questionable, but sometimes it's difficult whether you include solar water heating under energy efficiency or renewable energy. There are some actually who include it usually under energy efficiency. But I think it's solar water heating, it's one of the untapped actually potential because it's a proven technology that has existed long time ago, but we can see that several countries, for example, relatively speaking, are not doing as they should. So at the global level, we would see that, for example, that China still accounts for the largest share with 71% in terms of installed capacity. That's 653 million square meter of installed solar water heating. That's really big one. So given that I always talk about China, but if we have to give some credit in terms of renewable energy deployment and cost reductions, we have to thank China actually, because it's one of the countries that has been really responsible for the cost reductions and deployment at the global level. As you can see, Southeast and Mediterranean countries account for around 5%. In terms of installed capacity by country, you can see some champions, Palestine, Jordan, Tunisia, Lebanon. On the right side, on the one on yellow, I included Turkey because I always say Turkey because if I plot it on the same scale, it would make really the other countries kind of misrepresent the other countries. That's why actually, because by far it has really very important kind of penetration in terms of installed capacity. It has around 15, I would say, gigawatt thermal, which is the equivalent of around 20 million square meters. Okay, just basically, as we compare electricity in terms of installed capacity, in terms of the whole system, I think the best maybe kind of indicator to show the penetration of solar water heating is the per capita. How many kilowatt thermal or square meter installed per capita? By far, you would see Israel, Palestine, Turkey actually have really, relatively speaking, higher per capita. And you would see in the right corner, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Morocco, Syria. Given that we are here in Morocco, and I would like to say maybe a word about that. That's very important actually. Yes, it is true in Morocco it's not a high penetration, but that's maybe due to the issue of subsidies, because still if we talk about from the payback period, I would say it's even more than 7 years to recuperate the initial investment. Maybe without subsidies, especially for butane, that's a totally different story. That would change the picture because solar water heating would be very competitive. So that's why I would think that this kind of there are some market distortions, especially I would say in Morocco and other countries, especially of subsidies. So that's what I have to say. And given that in Morocco, I opted maybe having a slide about Morocco, given that I don't want to say that much, given that a lot of kind of speakers that have presented the first day and even they already talked about Morocco, but this is just to give a general kind of overview about the progress in Morocco. We have in terms of the installed capacity from 2010 2018. We have by technology in terms of coal, oil, gas, and we have renewables. And the one on the right actually expresses the share of renewable electricity capacity into total installed capacity. If you can see that the share has increased from around 30, I would say, or yeah, 30% to 34. Actually, it could have been even higher, even 37% by 2018. But with the commissioning of the Safi coal power plant, which is almost around 1.4 gigawatt, if I'm not mistaken, it was commissioned in January as well. That's why it changed a bit the picture. But without that, the renewables could have achieved already 37%. So generally speaking, from regional perspective, I would say that Morocco is doing well. It's an energy importer because actually in terms of energy needs, I took this picture of an important kind of energy import bill 69, I think from, if I'm not mistaken, le Haut Commissariat au Plan, if I'm not mistaken. This has been fluctuating because it decreased due to reduction of energy prices at the global level, but it has increased actually in 2017. It has increased again. And why we need renewables? Because we know that it's more than 90% actually, even in Morocco, because in terms of energy needs, more than 90% of Morocco's energy needs are fulfilled through export. We have noticed that an evolving regulatory policy framework. We have seen kind of the consolidation of several laws, the establishment at the constitutional level of an independent regulator. Still some challenges actually, especially in terms of grid access, issues, financing and subsidies. Financing, as I said at some point in my presentation, because we have not seen up to now the full, I would say, involvement of private commercial banks, because up to now we have seen the difference sometimes by international financial institutions like EBRD, World Bank, so on and development agencies. And just the graph to the on the left, bottom left, it's just basically the progress towards achieving targets. So I'll just conclude basically these are my last two slides. Just to wrap up, basically the South and East Mediterranean countries represent a minor share of renewable capacity at the global level, which was around 2%. What we have seen that the energy mix is still heavily fueled by fossil fuels in terms of the total energy mix. The picture in the under the electricity mix is a bit different, and we see that kind of more penetration rates at the electricity sector. We have also seen kind of record low levels of electricity prices compared to the global level, and one thing that I didn't talk, because with the exception actually of some countries, especially maybe Algeria and Lebanon, most of the projects are large utility scales actually, that they are kind of administered by a renewable energy agency or a regulator or a ministry. I think the potential as well, we have to promote maybe kind of small scales, especially in Lebanon. They are doing good job in terms of these small scale projects. And as I also say in financing, I already talked about, so no need to go through it. And for the way to go ahead, we have some kind of things to kind of consider at regulatory aspects and technical aspects to more consolidate regulatory and policy framework, to design policies to promote the wider deployment, especially as I was saying, for distributed PV and other application for especially for agriculture, solar water pumping. This is very important, and it would even solve, I would say, the issue of subsidies, because and then if we promote solar water heating, especially at the residential sector, solar thermal for industrial process heating at the industrial sector, solar water pumping, for example, at the agriculture sector, I think it's a good way. At some point, we would not maybe need, especially in Morocco, if I would not exaggerate here, but at least the fees that go to the la caisse de compensation, it would be even much less. And to develop some innovative financing, well, there is nothing innovative, but maybe I would take the word out from financing there, but just to encourage especially the private sector banks, and to try to explain to them at the banking system how the technology has evolved, basically, so that, and to reduce risks so that they could offer interesting tariffs, which would basically kind of lower the cost of capital, and which would lower for sure the cost of electricity generation. At the technical aspects, we would have to kind of work on strengthening and expansion of the grid, because usually when we talk about renewables, it's not just the power generation per se, it's a complete system, because we have to also talk about the grid, because several countries, if I take the example that they have announced auctions, either they delayed them or they revised down actually the figures. If I take the example, if I'm not mistaken, of Turkey actually has to delay one of the already announced auctions because they have to do some grid studies to make sure that the grid is capable of absorbing the additional renewable capacity. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think that Tunisia has done the same thing. Yes, no, Jordan. Jordan actually initially has also kind of postponed the auctioning of wind and PV because they are now undergoing kind of a feasibility study to see the capacity of the grid. So these things have to go hand in hand. And we have, for a better integration of renewables, some people were talking yesterday, were asking the question about resources and data. This is very important. Accurate short-term forecasting, because this is very important for a better integration for even the hour ahead and day ahead. We have to make sure, especially for electricity planning, to see how much an electricity power plant, a CSP power plant or a PV would produce an hour ahead or a day ahead. That's very important. Some people actually talked about electric mobility, so I would not say more about that, which basically countries would still policies and infrastructure, because policy per se by itself is not enough, and strengthening cooperation south-south, because the idea, as people at some point they have what we call a Mediterranean grid to connect south of the Mediterranean to Europe. It is true that in Europe the demand is stagnating. However, a lot of countries in Europe would be substituting but the demand profiles are different. And as you can see in Morocco, for example, during the last couple of years has been already importing electricity from Spain, which is around between 15 and 20% of electricity need from Spain. But in January, I think for the first time during the interconnections between Morocco and Spain, there was actually a reverse flow. So we would see that more bi-directional flow actually, and even Morocco was actually exporting and selling electricity at the Spanish market. That's very good news. And I think in January I'll just finish, less than 20 seconds. The last thing is about digitalization. In a word, more connected with data. I think digitalization will have to play a key role in our efficient management kind of or our efficient system management of the energy system. And by this, I would like to thank you for coming. Thank you.
Bon, je ne me présente pas, je m'appelle Tahar Ashour et basta. Elle est là. Bien. Donc vous m'avez supporté ce matin, vous allez me supporter cet après-midi, je suis désolé. Donc on va parler un peu de l'innovation technologique pour des panneaux solaires photovoltaïques performants. Aujourd'hui, le photovoltaïque qui est en train de prendre sa place, et la place qui lui revient d'ailleurs, ne peut pas avancer sans qu'il y ait d'innovation et de développement en matière scientifique, technologique et de la cellule et du panneau. Parce que le panneau, c'est un ensemble de plusieurs composants et tous ces composants sont quand même assez importants afin de faire de lui un équipement performant, aussi bien sur le plan productible en énergie électrique et aussi bien Donc on va parler de ce que fait la société Al-Maden Maroc, implantée récemment au Maroc dans le Rif, dans la ville d'El Hussein. Là, je vous présente un peu l'évolution du marché mondial de la filière solaire photovoltaïque et on voit que depuis 2010 jusqu'à 2018, les choses évoluent et évoluent rapidement. Nous sommes à peu près en plus de 100 gigawatts d'installés côté filière photovoltaïque. La puissance installée par région. En 2018, on a pris 2 régions. C'est très simple. Comme ça, on ne peut pas se tromper. Et bien, ces 2 régions sont le colosse du photovoltaïque, la Chine, qui se taille le gros morceau, 53%, et le reste, et là on s'est trompé, c'est 47%. Mathématiquement parlant, on ne peut pas avoir 100% avec 57, 53. D'accord. À la râle, des fois les mathématiques ne sont pas des sciences exactes. Donc, c'est pas 1 plus 1 font 2, là c'est autre chose. Mais ça fait rien. Donc c'est 47, c'est plutôt 47% et non pas 57. C'est simplement pour dire que la Chine a pris pratiquement la moitié du marché au point de vue production et bien sûr distribution des panneaux photovoltaïques. D'ailleurs, sur les top 10, les 10 premiers, il y a un seul, non chinois, non asiatique du moins, c'est Canadien Solar, donc c'est canadien. Sinon, les 9 autres sont soit la Chine, soit la Corée, soit le Japon. Là, ce graphe nous permet de comparer un peu l'évolution et l'efficience en pourcent de la cellule, de la type de cellule, mais avec le panneau, sans panneau et avec panneau. Et on va de haut en bas, la cellule en CI silicium, donc à 19,8, et ça, donc ça prend son nom. Donc cette cellule qui est là, on est venu rajouter à la partie supérieure, surface supérieure de la cellule, on a rajouté une couche fine, ce qu'on appelle sensibilisée, pour que la cellule puisse absorber le maximum de photons. On sait très bien que le photovoltaïque fonctionne par les photons, et non par la chaleur. Donc c'est l'effet lumière qui nous donne de l'énergie électrique via la cellule. Contrairement à un capteur solaire de chauffage de l'eau, c'est plutôt la chaleur que nous exploitons pour avoir de l'eau chaude. Dans le photovoltaïque, on a besoin d'électricité et c'est plutôt le photon, donc c'est l'élément essentiel de la lumière, qui va nous donner de l'électricité. Donc cette couche de perovskite qui a été rajoutée, c'était pour rendre la surface supérieure qui reçoit le rayonnement solaire être plus absorbante de photons, donc meilleur rendement pour la cellule. Bon, cette technologie a été étudiée et vérifiée en labo. Elle est au stade de la petite industrialisation, en attendant qu'elle sera divulguée encore plus. Mais maintenant, la technologie PERC. La technologie PERC, c'est une technologie mature, utilisée par les constructeurs de panneaux photovoltaïques. Et la société Almaden, effectivement, elle utilise des cellules monocristallins, polycristallins ou bien mono avec la couche tête pour augmenter sa rentabilité. Alors là, la cellule monocristallin classique, on la voit ici, dessinée en coupe. Donc nous avons le silicium à faire, on a la partie supérieure et la partie backsheet, donc inférieure. Donc qu'est-ce qu'on a fait avec la perovskite? On a travaillé sur la surface supérieure de la cellule. Mais on a vu aussi qu'on peut travailler sur la surface inférieure de la cellule, pourquoi pas l'arrière de la cellule, et ils ont rajouté ce diélectrique de nature passive, c'est important, donc il n'a aucune influence chimico-physique sur le silicium, mais il a cette particularité de réfléchir le rayonnement solaire qui a pénétré, qui va traverser la cellule. Donc cette réflexion, c'est comme un polymère sur laquelle se colle la cellule pour qu'elle ne bouge pas. Et en bas, il est pris en tenaille avec une feuille de tédlar, c'est un polymère mais un peu plus épais. Bon, le tédlar, jusqu'à présent, il a fonctionné, il fonctionne toujours. Mais on a remarqué que le tédlar, comme c'est une matière polymère, même de bonne qualité, elle finit par le temps, et surtout dans les pays chauds comme les nôtres, elle finit par se dégrader, d'avoir des ondulations, des micro-ondulations, et quand elle commence à avoir des micro-ondulations, ça va agir sur la cellule et ça crée des micro-fissures, des fois sur les cellules. Donc, les gens qui travaillent dessus ont compris que ce n'est pas le bon élément, il faut changer ce tédlar. Et c'est comme ça qu'on est parti pour on a amélioré légèrement donc le panneau et le backsheet qui était en tédlar, on l'a changé à un autre polymère mieux adapté à la chaleur pour qu'il puisse ne pas désaltérer la cellule qui est dessus. Et à ce moment-là, on a pu quand même avoir une meilleure longévité des panneaux dans le temps. On ne s'est pas arrêté là. Il y a des gens qui travaillent pour nous, c'est gentil. Donc, on a passé maintenant à des choses plus sérieuses. C'est ce qu'on appelle le bivers, le double glace. Donc, on a remplacé carrément le backsheet qui était en matière polymère, on l'a changé carrément en vitre. comme la vitre du dessus. Donc on a mis en sandwich la cellule, l'EVA qui est devenu une surface collante simplement, et à la place du Kevlar, on a mis encore une deuxième vitre en bas. Et c'est comme ça que sont nés ce qu'on appelle les panneaux double glace ou bien bivers qu'on trouve maintenant sur le marché et ils sont là un peu partout. Maintenant, ce verre doit être quand même assez spécial. Premièrement, il doit être translucide à 99,99%. Deuxièmement, il doit être résistant au changement de la température, qu'on appelle le choc thermique. Entre la nuit, il fait froid, le matin, il fait chaud, donc il doit être résistant. Quatrièmement, il doit s'adapter à toute corrosion, sable et autres. Donc, ce n'est pas de n'importe quel verre. Et c'est sur ce verre-là que Almaden est championne. Puisque Almaden, d'origine, bon, c'est une société chinoise, Almaden, c'était le champion de la fabrication du verre. Tout genre, ils ont travaillé beaucoup sur le verre solaire, et c'est comme ça qu'ils sont lancés après dans le photovoltaïque pour rajouter à leur verre les cellules photovoltaïques. Donc ce sont les number one en matière de fabrication de verre spécial pour solaire. Donc qu'est-ce qu'il a de... Donc c'est un verre très fin, d'épaisseur très fine, égale ou inférieure à 2 mm. À la place de la feuille d'Eva, on voit ici, de la colle, on l'a changé par un autre polymère, encapsulant, qu'on appelle. Donc c'est une feuille encore plus fine que l'Eva, et surtout qui est pratiquement inchangeable au point de vue caractéristique physico-chimique sous l'effet de la chaleur. Donc on a garanti la stabilité des cellules qui sont prises en sandwich entre le verre supérieur et le verre inférieur. Et cette stabilité des cellules nous permet de les avoir avec nous sur 20, 25, même 30 ans. Et d'ailleurs, ce genre de panneaux, aujourd'hui, ils sont garantis 30 ans. Donc on n'est plus à 20, on n'est plus à 25, on a 30 ans de garantie parce que nous avons une qualité de verre assez stable qui permet de protéger les cellules de tout point de vue. Almaden, c'est une firme chinoise implantée en Chine, mais Almaden a commencé, comme j'avais dit, à fabriquer le verre et surtout à le faire transformer en un verre technologiquement valable pour le photovoltaïque. Fondé en 2006, Almaden est le premier producteur mondial de verre traité anti-reflet et trempé ultra mince, c'est-à-dire feuilleté. Il n'est pas granulé, il est feuilleté, et c'est pour ça qu'on va voir pourquoi il est feuilleté, parce que ça va résister à n'importe quel choc. Almaden, donc, a une capacité assez importante. Elle fabrique et commercialise à peu près 40 millions de mètres carrés de verre anti-reflet, qu'on appelle arc, et du fer trempé ultra mince. Almaden Chine fabrique bien sûr des modules photovoltaïques high-tech avec des cellules TARC. Et Almaden Chine fournit les verres pour la fabrication des panneaux, ces verres innovants. Elle le fournit à peu près une vingtaine de fabricants de panneaux photovoltaïques. Almaden, bien sûr, du fait de sa majesté en tant que premier fabricant mondial de verre spécial solaire, elle travaille à l'international. Elle a développé bien sûr des panneaux photovoltaïques de 72 à 40 cellules avec les technologies poly, mono et carte, et elle travaille sur des développements à l'international en manière d'ingénierie, en manière de lancement de projets et pour tout ce qui est EPCM, c'est-à-dire prendre en main l'exécution de champs photovoltaïques et de centrales assez importantes. L'évolution de la taille des cellules est possible. Aujourd'hui, on a toujours été confronté face à un panneau avec une cellule qui a 2 pouces, donc, et tout ce qu'on sait. Et bien maintenant, on a passé à des half cellules, moitié cellules, et même quart cellules. Alors pour les jeunes étudiants ou même des techniciens qui sont bien avertis, pourquoi la half cellule est intéressante? Allez, rapidement, une cellule, le courant qui la traverse, il est directement proportionnel à sa surface. Donc plus la surface est grande, plus le courant est grand. Et bien si là, je la divise en 2, automatiquement la demi-cellule va avoir un courant plus faible. Elle va chauffer moins. Parce qu'une cellule, c'est quoi? C'est une diode, vous le savez tous. C'est identique à une diode avec une résistance en série, une résistance en parallèle. Donc, parcouru par un courant, cette résistance va chauffer et c'est pour ça que la cellule choque. Alors, si je diminue le courant qui va traverser ces résistances, je vais diminuer les pertes par effet Joule dans la cellule. Donc, je vais la chauffer moins. Et si je la chauffe moins, donc elle va mieux travailler et mieux donner de l'énergie. C'est pour ça qu'on a divisé par 2. Et deuxième raison aussi, on voit ce panneau. Ce panneau, au départ, c'était un panneau avec 72 cellules en série. Vous savez très bien que l'ombrage est l'ennemi numéro 1 d'un panneau photovoltaïque. Si vous mettez un peu d'ombre sur une seule cellule parmi les 72, vous avez mis hors service votre panneau. Alors maintenant, j'ai 72 demi-cellules en haut et 71, comme si j'avais fabriqué 2 panneaux adjacents, indépendants. Donc si je fais un ombrage par-dessus haut, j'ai toujours les 72 demi-cellules qui vont produire de l'énergie. Donc il y a double avantage. J'ai baissé le courant dans la demi-cellule, donc j'ai baissé les pertes par effet Joule, l'échauffement, et j'ai gagné, au point de vue au moins ombrage, j'aurai au moins mon demi-panneau qui est actif. Alors maintenant, on parle du quart même, du quart de cellules, et encore pour augmenter davantage tout ceci. L'effet maintenant des bustes, qu'on appelle les bustes barres, ce sont ces filaments argentés qui vont conduire le courant électrique produit par la cellule. La technologie telle que vous la connaissez, la plus répandue, c'est ce qu'on appelle 3 bus, donc 3 conducteurs, on est là-bas. On a commencé comme ça. Après on a pensé de faire les 4 bus. Pourquoi 4? Plus on rajoute un filament de conduction, plus on va alléger le courant par filament. Plus de productible à haute température ambiante, parce qu'on est passé à cette technologie du cercle et surtout à la technologie du double glace, le l'hiver, qui permet un meilleur refroidissement de la cellule. Et on est passé de 12 à 30 ans de garantie avec ce type de cellule. Alors, bifacial, le bifacial, vous l'avez vu sur le stand, il a l'avantage de la cellule et à double face, elle a l'avantage la cellule double face, elle a l'avantage de produire de deux côtés. Mais vous allez me dire, mais en bas, comment ça va se passer? Et bien, en bas, c'est le rayon solaire quand il va frapper le sol, on va chercher les rayons diffus en quelque sorte, et les rayons provenant de la surface qu'on appelle le système albédo, on va aller les chercher, et ils vont pénétrer dans la cellule par le bas, et ils vont nous donner sur la face bas encore du productible. Et on peut augmenter à 25-30% le productible d'un. Et avec les bifaciales, on peut donner Almaden dans 30 ans de garantie. On a aussi gagné sur le cadre. Il n'y a plus de cadre. Ça fait un gain. Il n'y a plus d'aluminium, on est en aluminium, donc il n'y a plus de matière à payer, il n'y a plus de main-d'œuvre pour passer ce cadre. Donc on va gagner sur aussi le cadre. Et c'est comme ça qu'aujourd'hui, avec ces nouveaux panneaux biglass, bifacial si on veut, eh bien, le watt crête n'a pas augmenté, il a augmenté de très peu, à peine 2% sur son prix. Mais on a gagné au moins 20% sur le productible. Donc le jeu est quand même gagnant au départ. Les qualités du verre arc d'Almaden. C'est un verre qui est basé sur, dans sa fabrication, sur de la nanotechnologie. Deuxièmement, c'est un verre qui a été usiné thermiquement. Troisièmement, il a une épaisseur de 2 mm, surface anti-réfléchissante et surface anti-salissante. C'est très important. On se fait bien sur un champ, ou bien chez vous, vous avez 5 kg sur le toit, vous y allez presque jamais. Surtout quand vous n'avez pas d'escalier, donc c'est impossible. Vous êtes en net échelle, tous les mois. Et la crasse qu'il y a sur un panneau après un mois, elle est assez importante. Il y a la poussière, il y a, excusez-moi, les oiseaux qui passent et qui font leurs besoins des fois. Il y a beaucoup de choses qui se passent. Et si on n'y va pas, on ne nettoie pas, on est en train de perdre tout le productible. Alors ces verres, développés par Almaden, sont anti-nettoyants, ou presque. Donc ça permet quand même de gagner énormément sur la production d'énergie électrique de votre installation. Deuxième chose, ce verre, du fait de son traitement, quand il pleut, sur un verre normal, quand il pleut, il y a toujours des petites gouttelettes qui restent des fois. Et ces gouttelettes, c'est quoi? C'est une loupe qui concentre le rayon solaire et elle va chauffer davantage les cellules. En plus de ça, quand elle est, une fois, elle s'évapore, elle va rester une petite auréole sur le verre. Et cette auréole, c'est un point faible au point de vue pénétration des rayons. Donc, les verres Almaden sont traités de telle façon que quand il pleut, l'eau ruisselle, quel que soit l'angle d'inclinaison du panneau, et comme ça, on n'aura pas ce problème. Donc, on va avoir, en plus, on va gagner aussi sur, avec ces verres, on va gagner sur les frais de nettoyage. Aujourd'hui, si on veut que son champ, surtout quand on a un champ important, si on veut qu'il produise tout le temps, on a intérêt à le nettoyer. Et 2 kilos, on peut les nettoyer nous-mêmes, 3 kilos. Mais quand il s'agit des centaines et des milliers de kilowatts installés, donc il faut faire appel à des entreprises spécialisées, avec des machines spécialisées, et ça coûte. Ben, avec le verre Almaden, on va éviter toutes ces dépenses supplémentaires qui vont rentrer dans l'OPEX du projet. Alors les modules Almaden, comme ils sont en verre trempé feuilleté, et voilà, je reviens au mot feuilleté, et non pas granulé, c'est pas du sécurite, c'est du verre feuilleté, et bien ça lui donne une résistance au choc incroyable. Et ça a été fait, cet essai-là. Du verre, que vous voyez dans le stand, hein, un du verre, sur lequel une belle voiture rouge, Volkswagen je crois, qui passe dessus, Et sur le toit, sur les panneaux sur le toit, des stacks de sable d'au moins 1,5 tonne à 2 tonnes sur le toit, sur l'hiver. Et rien ne bouge. Et vous pouvez, le verre actuellement développé par Almaden pour ces panneaux, plier pratiquement, ne cassera pas. Donc c'est un verre feuilleté, mais ce n'est pas parce qu'il est feuilleté seulement, parce qu'il est feuilleté, mais parce qu'aussi on a utilisé du vrac au point de vue qualité de verre. Ben voilà plus ou moins ce que Almaden a fait. Donc 2006, Almaden est fondée en Chine. 2011, elle est cotée en bourse. 2014, elle crée Almaden MENA à Dubaï, qui est une filiale. En 2017, Almaden augmente son capacité de production à 1500 MW. En 2018, elle fonde Almaden Suisse, mais Almaden Suisse ne fabrique pas, c'est simplement un centre de recherche et surtout de marketing et de connaissance sur l'Europe. Mais ce n'est pas une fabrique. Et en 2018, en octobre 2018 exactement, Almaden Morocco a démarré à El Hussein. Mais avec la seule différence, et on va le voir, donc Almaden Chine, la mise en mer, accolé à Almaden Chine, on a Almaden Dubaï, on a Almaden Dubaï qui est accolé, donc une filiale, organiquement parlant, une filiale à Almaden Chine. Par contre, Almaden Morocco, elle est indépendante, mais elle bénéficie simplement d'une assistance technique de Almaden Chine. Mais c'est carrément une société indépendante à Almaden organiquement parlant, mais elle bénéficie simplement de la high-tech de Almaden Chine. Donc, compte tenu de cette technologie avancée de ces modules, Almaden Morocco veut accueillir une bonne part du marché dans les pays chauds d'Afrique, puisque son panneau s'adapte bien à ce climat qui est agressif pour les panneaux de l'ancienne génération. Donc, les températures élevées n'affectent pas le rendement de ces modules grâce aux cellules mono-arc et aux divers arcs. Donc, on peut aujourd'hui dire que dans des pays où il fait assez chaud, on peut avoir une bonne production via ces panneaux-là d'Almaden. Donc, Almaden Maroc, elle est située à El Hussein. Il y a un U en dessous, c'est HO, mais il n'y a pas de U. L'unité de production de modèle PV Almaden a démarré en octobre 2018 avec une capacité de production de 250 MW. Elle produira des panneaux PV mono. Elle produira des panneaux. Allez, plus que 30 secondes. Elle produira donc des panneaux PV, mono et polycristallins classiques, mais surtout des panneaux binaires de plus importants. Doté d'une ligne de production archi-automatisée, Almaden Maroc est la plus grande unité industrielle en Afrique en matière de production de panneaux photovoltaïques et plus en matière de production de panneaux high-tech, côté cellules et côté cellules et côté modules. Donc, on voit là quelques images de l'usine d'Almaden El Hussein. Et voilà, et je vous remercie pour votre attention.